They say money can't buy happiness, but my husband Mark certainly tried. And for 15 years, I believed he had succeeded. We were the picture-perfect American family, living the suburban dream. A 5-bedroom house in a gated community just outside of Atlanta. A Mercedes GLS in the driveway for me, a Tesla for him. Our 2 kids, Leo and Sophie, attended the best private school in the county. Mark was a senior partner at a boutique investment firm. He was the kind of man who wore $5,000 watches and tipped waiters $100 just because he could. He was charismatic, confident, and completely in charge of our universe, especially the financial part. Early in our marriage, I tried to stay involved. I'd ask about our savings goals or retirement plans. Mark would just kiss my forehead, give me that charming, dismissive smile, and say, "Sarah, baby, you take care of the home and the kids. Let me worry about the money. That's my job. You just enjoy it." So I did. I enjoyed the country club memberships. I enjoyed not looking at price tags when I went shopping. I trusted him implicitly. He was my husband. Why wouldn't I? There were cracks, of course, if I had bothered to look closer. The nights he came home late, smelling faintly of different perfume, which he blamed on business dinners with female clients. The business trips that seemed to happen more frequently, sometimes over weekends. The way he would immediately lock his phone the second I walked into the room. But denial is a powerful drug, especially when it's wrapped in luxury. I told myself he was just stressed, working hard for us. Then came last Tuesday. We were having dinner. Mark was bragging about a new client he'd just landed, spinning a story about a multi-million-dollar portfolio. He lifted his glass of expensive Cabernet to make a toast. "To the good life," he said, grinning. He took a sip, and then his eyes went wide. The glass dropped from his hand, shattering on our imported Italian tile floor. He clutched his chest, a guttural sound escaping his throat, and collapsed. Massive heart attack. At 42. The next few hours were a blur of sirens, paramedics, and terrified children. By the time I got to the hospital, Mark was in the ICU, hooked up to machines, placed in a medically induced coma to let his heart heal. I was sitting in the waiting room at 3 a.m., numb with shock, still wearing clothes stained with wine from dinner. I needed caffeine to function. I walked down to the 24-hour hospital cafeteria. I grabbed a black coffee and a stale muffin. The total was $8.50. I pulled out the emergency credit card Mark insisted I keep an American Express Platinum. I handed it to the tired cashier. She swiped it, paused, swiped it again. She looked at me with an apologetic grimace. "I'm sorry, ma'am. It's declined." "That's impossible," I said, my voice raspy. "It's an Amex Platinum. There's no limit. Try it again, please." She did. "Still declined. Do you have another form of payment?" My stomach dropped. A glitch. It had to be a bank glitch. I pulled out my own debit card, the one linked to our joint household checking account for groceries and gas. Declined. Now, panic started to set in, cutting through the shock of the heart attack. I had no cash on me. I had to leave the coffee and walk back to the waiting room empty-handed. I sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair and stared at my phone. I needed to know what was happening. Mark always handled everything digital. I knew his phone passcode. It was our anniversary. But his phone was locked away with his personal effects by hospital security. Then I remembered his iPad. He had brought it in the ambulance. It was in his bag at my feet. I pulled it out. Thank God, it used the same passcode. I opened it and found the banking app. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type in the username. I guessed the password a combination of our kids' names. It worked. The dashboard loaded. I stared at the screen, my brain unable to process what my eyes were seeing. Our primary checking account. The one that Mark's $20,000 a month salary was deposited into. The one that paid our mortgage, the car leases, the tuition. Balance, $412.36. I refreshed the page. It didn't change. I clicked over to our joint savings account. The rainy day fund that Mark swore had over 6 figures in it. Balance, $25 hours. The kids' 529 college savings plans closed 6 months ago. The money withdrawn. I felt like the floor was falling out from under me. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just a missed paycheck. This was catastrophic. Then I saw a notification at the top of the banking app. An overdue notice. Health insurance premium, 90 days past due. Policy canceled effective yesterday. I looked up toward the ICU doors where my husband was lying, racking up thousands of dollars in medical bills every hour. We had no money. We had no insurance. My husband hadn't just had a heart attack. He had strapped a financial suicide vest to our family and detonated it, and I was the only one left awake in the rubble. Mark lay in that hospital bed, a silent statue surrounded by beeping machines, unable to answer for the devastation he'd caused. I couldn't just sit there and wait for him to wake up. I needed answers. I left the kids with my neighbor and drove home as the sun was coming up. Our beautiful house suddenly felt sinister. It felt like a crime scene. I went straight to Mark's home office. He always kept the door locked, a rule the kids and I knew never to break. "Daddy's working with sensitive client info," he'd say. I found the key hidden on top of the doorframe. The room was immaculate. Mahogany desk, leather chair, framed diplomas. It smelled of his expensive cologne and secrets. I started tearing it apart. I pulled books off shelves, looking for a wall safe. I emptied file cabinets. For an hour, I found nothing but old tax returns that looked suspiciously thin. Then, I pulled out the bottom drawer of his desk completely. Taped underneath it, tucked away in a small manila envelope, I found it. It wasn't cash. It was worse. It was a cheap, prepaid burner phone. A flip phone, like something a drug dealer would use in a movie. Why would a man with the newest iPhone need this? It wasn't password protected. I opened it. There were no calls in the log, only texts, hundreds of them, going back 3 years. They weren't from business partners. They were all to and from one number saved simply as J. I started reading from the beginning. My stomach churned violently with every scroll. "Can't wait for our weekend in Aspen, baby. Told Sarah it's a client retreat. Love you." Sent by Mark 3 years ago. "Leo's t-ball game is at 4 today. Are you coming? He misses his daddy." Sent by Jay 2 years ago. "Leo? Our son's name is Leo. Was this some sick joke?" Then the text turned financial. "Rent is due on the apartment, honey. $2,800. Can you transfer it to my account?" Sent by Jay 6 months ago. "Done. Bought you those diamond earrings you wanted too. Wear them for me tonight." Sent by Mark. I sat on the floor of that office, surrounded by the debris of my life, realizing the horrifying truth. Mark didn't just have an affair. He had a whole other life, a parallel existence, another woman, another child, and he was funding it all with our money. But the $250,000 salary couldn't support 2 luxury lifestyles. So where was the rest coming from? I went back to his desk. I found his laptop. I needed to see the full credit report. It took me 3 guesses to get his laptop password. It wasn't my birthday anymore. It was Aspen 2020. I pulled up Credit Karma. The score that flashed on the screen made me gasp. 490. My husband, the brilliant investor, had the credit score of someone who had just declared bankruptcy. Total outstanding debt, $1,200,000. I clicked into the details, and it was like reading a horror story written in Financial Transactions. He had opened 5 new credit cards in the last 2 years, all maxed out. There was a $90,000 auto loan for a Porsche Cayenne. We didn't own a Porsche. Jay must be driving it. And then, the deepest betrayals. The ones that are crimes. There were 3 credit cards opened in my name. Cards I had never seen, with balances totaling over $80,000. He had stolen my identity. And finally, the death blow. 6 months ago, Mark had taken out a second mortgage, a home equity line of credit, HELOC, on our house for $400,000. To do that, he needed my signature. I clicked on the loan documents stored in his files. There it was, my signature at the bottom, a perfect forgery. He had drained $400,000 of equity out of our home in 6 months. Where did it go? I cross-referenced the HELOC withdrawals with the texts on the burner phone. A $50,000 withdrawal matched a text from Jay about down payment on the condo. A $20,000 withdrawal matched pictures Jay sent of a luxury trip to Disney World with her son. I wasn't just broke. I was over $1 million in debt. My identity was compromised. My house was leveraged to the hilt, and my husband was in a coma while his mistress lived in a condo paid for with my children's future. I looked at the burner phone again. There was an address in the very first text message Jay had sent him years ago. I knew where I had to go. I didn't shower. I didn't change my clothes. I got in my leased Mercedes, which I now knew we were 3 months behind on payments for, and drove across town. The address was a modern condo complex in an upscale, trendy neighborhood. Not as expensive as ours, but definitely not cheap. Apartment 4B. I stood outside the door for 5 minutes, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might have a heart attack myself. What was I doing? What was I going to say? I almost turned around. But the anger pushed me forward. I knocked, hard. A young woman opened the door. She was beautiful, maybe 28, yoga pants, expensive highlights in her hair, and clinging to her leg was a little boy, about 4 years old. He looked exactly like Mark. The same eyes, the same nose. It was undeniable. She looked at me, confused, then annoyed. "Can I help you? Are you selling something?" I couldn't speak for a moment. I just stared at the child. My husband's other son. "I'm Sarah," I finally managed to say, my voice devoid of any emotion. Her face went blank. "Sarah? Mark's ex-wife? The crazy one?" I almost laughed. It would have been a hysterical, screaming laugh. "Ex-wife? Is that what he told you?" "Yeah," she said, getting defensive, trying to close the door. "He said you guys have been separated for 5 years, and you refuse to sign the divorce papers because you're mentally unstable and trying to take all his money. He said that's why he has to keep his finances separate from me, because of the alimony lawsuits." The sheer scale of the lie took my breath away. He had played us both perfectly. He used me as the villain in her story to explain why he could never fully commit, why he had to hide money. "We had dinner together last night," I said quietly. "Before his heart attack, in the house we still live in together with our 2 teenage children." The color drained from her face. She looked down at her son, then back at me. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She wasn't the girlfriend waiting for a divorce. She was the mistress hiding in a condo paid for with stolen money. We didn't scream at each other. There was no dramatic fight. We just stood there in the doorway, 2 women destroyed by the same man's profound narcissism. "He's broke, Jay," I said, using the name from her phone. "He stole everything from me, from my kids, and I'm guessing he borrowed from you too?" She leaned against the doorframe, looking sick. I co-signed the loan for this condo. He said it was temporary until the divorce settled." I walked away. I had seen enough. The fallout was swift and brutal. When I got home, the mail had arrived. There was a certified letter from the bank. A notice of intent to foreclose. Mark hadn't paid the mortgage, the real one or the fraudulent second one in 4 months. I had to sit my 2 teenagers down and tell them that their father was in a coma, that we had no money, and that we were about to lose our home. The look on their faces, the end of their innocence, is something I will never forgive Mark for. Mark woke up 10 days later. I wasn't at his bedside holding his hand. When I finally went to see him, he looked small, weak. "Sarah, baby," he whispered, trying to use that old charm. "I can explain. It got out of control. I did it for us. I wanted you to have everything. The pressure, it was too much." "For us?" I pulled the burner phone out of my purse and dropped it on his chest. "Was Jay for us? Was forging my signature for us? Was stealing your children's college fund for us?" He closed his eyes. No remorse, just regret that he got caught. "My lawyer will be in touch," I said. "Get well soon, Mark. You're going to need your strength for prison." I contacted the FBI. Financial infidelity of this magnitude, involving forgery and identity theft across state lines, is a federal crime. He is currently awaiting trial. His second family is gone. Jay is suing him too, trying to save herself from the debts he saddled her with. We lost the house. We lost the cars. The country club memberships are long gone. I moved with the kids into a small, 2-bedroom apartment. I got a job as an office manager, my first job in 16 years. It barely covers rent and food. My kids are transferring to public school next year. They are working part-time jobs to save for college themselves now. It's a hard life. It's a humbling life. But for the first time in 15 years, it's an honest life. This channel is Twisted Trust, and my story is the ultimate warning about financial infidelity. It's not just about money. It's about the secrets money can buy. Here is what you need to take away from my nightmare. Number 1, total transparency. If your partner demands total control of finances and refuses to show you statements, passwords, or credit reports, you are in danger. Marriage is a financial partnership. Demand a seat at the table. Number 2, trust but verify. Once a year, pull your own credit report. Check for accounts you don't recognize. Look at the actual bank statements, not just the balance your spouse tells you. Number 3, maintain your financial independence. Never ever let yourself get to a point where you don't know how to pay a bill or where you don't have a dime of your own access to emergency funds. Because the man sleeping next to you might be dreaming of a life that costs you everything you have.